Hey friend, I'm so
Hey.
excited to be here with you so that we can talk about our voting plans and what all of our options are for this election that has actually already begun in our country.
Yep. The voting's already happening, and I'm really glad we're doing this. I feel like we've been having so many conversations about how you and I are going to vote, how we're speaking with our family and friends about going to vote, so it feels like the right time for this sort of video.
Finally. And still, stuff may change in the weeks ahead. But the most important thing, we are definitely in agreement, is to make a plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Or multiple plans.
My name is Tess Summer, and I'm the program manager for the Center for Social Responsibility at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan.
And I'm Meg Sullivan. I'm the director of JCC Harlem. All right, you want to dive in here and talk about what folks' options are for voting and how we can walk everyone through making some of these kind of challenging decisions about how we will actually vote?
Before we go through and make our voting plans, what's really important for us all to do is to check our voter registration status. I know that for myself in the midterm elections, I actually had moved about 20 blocks and did not update my voter registration status and my address, and I had to vote with a provisional ballot. And I think that's something we should all try to avoid in all elections, and especially this one. So up on the screen, we'll have the link for you to go and check if you're registered, where you're registered, and you'll see if you need to update that or not.
So don't assume just because you have voted before that your voter registration is still active. If you have not checked it in the last 30 days, just go back and check it for peace of mind and to be able to troubleshoot if for whatever reason your name has been purged from the roll.
Exactly. And after you do that, we're able to make a voting plan. And the way I think it's really helpful to think about voting in this election is to break it into 3 categories. We have voting by mail / absentee voting. We have voting early in person, and we have voting on election day in person. And I think it's helpful to break down all 3 of those categories because there's a bunch of caveats and nuances to each of those. And it makes it a little confusing.
Definitely.
So to start, I'll just briefly go over voting by mail and absentee voting. So real quick, there is a little bit of a difference between voting by mail and absentee voting. I think people use those terms interchangeably, and it gets a little bit confusing. They are essentially the same thing, but the main difference is that for absentee voting, you have to request your ballot. And generally speaking, for mail-in voting, states automatically send registered voters an absentee ballot or their mail-in ballot. In New York, you have to apply for your absentee ballot. So you're not going to be automatically sent anything. If you're registered, you will have to apply for an absentee ballot. And you'll need to do that by October 27th. But I think it's really important for us all to do that way ahead of time to give the Postal Service some time to fulfill all of the many requests that they're receiving.
Right, like even if the deadline is technically the 27th, think about how close that is to election day. So say you make your request online, which is the fastest, and then you have a matter of days that the Board of Elections has to send your ballot and the post office has to actually deliver you your ballot, and then you have to open it, make sure the information is correct, fill it out, and return it via one of a few methods, and that's a really tight window after October 27th.
Exactly.
All happen.
So as you're watching this, if you're interested in voting by absentee ballot, we suggest you request it right away. And we have that link for you as well. And after you request your absentee ballot, a really cool thing that has happened for New York City residents is that you can actually track the status of your absentee ballot. So once you request it, you can literally track it to see if if your request has been approved, if they've mailed you your ballot. And after you've sent it in, I believe you can track it from there as well, right?
Right, that's right.
Right. So that is a super helpful new thing that happened.
Super awesome thing that has happened for sure.
If you were deciding to vote with an absentee ballot, to mail it in, the deadline for that is that it has to be postmarked by November 3rd. So you can submit it on election day as long as it is postmarked for that date. However, I think that considering a much larger percent of the population is going to be voting that way, I think we can all agree it'd be better to submit as soon as possible. So as soon as you get it in the mail, send it off.
That also buys you time, if you're a New York City resident, as you just said, to track your ballot and see that it has arrived and is actually being counted. Or if you find by election day, because you've submitted it in advance of election day, that it hasn't been received, you can still find alternative options for being able to cast your vote.
Exactly. If you are interested in getting an absentee ballot, but maybe don't want to mail it because of logistics or concerns about it getting counted in time, you now have the option of filling out your absentee ballot and then dropping it off at a poll site. There are drop boxes at all early voting poll sites and election day poll sites, and you can drop it off, and that's it. It'll be picked up and it'll be counted. But you don't have to go through the whole mailing
all
process.
poll sites have drop boxes for ballots, or only some?
All poll sites.
All poll sites have drop boxes to receive ballots.
Awesome.
You
can also drop it off at your Board of Elections if that is of interest to you or convenient to you. So there are a lot of options for your absentee ballot, and you kind of just have to figure out which one works best for you, and map it out in your head.
No matter what option you choose, we are strongly encouraging that if you are using mail-in voting, if you live in a state that has mail-in voting, or absentee voting in the state of New York, that you do it ASAP. You request it as soon as you can, you track it along the way, and that once you have received it, you get it either in the mail to the Board of Elections or to a drop box at a polling place as soon as possible, so that, again, you can make an alternative plan if for some reason you are concerned that your ballot has not been received or counted.
Yep. Nailed it.
Awesome.
All right. You want to talk about voting early in person?
Sure do. I have never voted early before, and I'm really excited about this option, which is not a new one, but hopefully will lessen some of the lines and wait times for those who have no choice but to vote on election day. Voting early in New York happens between October 24th and November 1st. You do not need anything special or to do anything special in order to vote early. As long as you are registered, which, again, if you have not checked your voter registration within the last 30 days, go check and make sure that you are still an active registered voter. And once you have confirmed that you are successfully registered to vote, you can just show up to an early voting location. There are designated early voting sites all over the city in all of the boroughs, and your early voting assignment may or may not be the same as your election day polling place.
So you can't just assume that you can use your normal poll site. You have to confirm it's an early election site.
That's right. Do not assume that your regular polling place is also your early voting site. It may be the same, but chances are it's actually somewhere different. That may also require additional travel time. So you want to know that well in advance of the week of early voting if this is a choice that you'd like to employ for yourself, so that you have time to make a viable plan for yourself. To find out what your poll site is for early voting and for election day, visit findmypollsite.vote.nyc. We'll, of course, link this. And figure out what your early voting location is and what your day of your election day polling site is to help you make a plan. The last option, the third option for voting, is to vote on election day in person. Election day is November 3rd. Poll sites in New York are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., which is a substantial window, but also a narrow one considering we're expecting to have high voter turnout for this election. So if you are planning to vote on election day and you do not have a backup option, that is your primary option for voting, we encourage you to get there as early as possible. There are folks who are in states where early voting has already started, who are waiting 8 to 10 hours to be able to vote. And we do not want people to get turned away on election day. So if this is your one option for voting, get there as early as possible.
Do you know if you get there too close to 9 p.m., can you be turned away?
That's a great question. I don't actually know what the Board of Elections authority is to keep the polls open past 9 o'clock and if it's state-based. So that's something that we will look up together and hopefully provide some more information for you all on, but it's an excellent question. But historically, many people have been turned away because the polls close while there's still a line outside all over the country. So even if there's a legal option for the Board of Elections to stay open past 9 o'clock, it's hard to know whether that will be true for the folks who are standing.
Sure.
But it's a really
no way to know how it'll play out in practice.
That's right. An important note is that it is perfectly legal to request an absentee ballot, to fill it out, to mail it, to have it be received and counted as your vote, and to still vote in person early or on election day. Your vote in person always overrides your absentee ballot. That is legally true, and there is so much unknown, and that has been greatly politicized about voting in this election and also historically in America. And so we each have to make a choice about what our voting plans are and how we think about the absentee option as we devise those plans for ourselves. I am planning to vote early in person. I have also requested my absentee ballot. I received it a few days ago. And I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do with my absentee ballot. I believe that I am going to attempt to vote early in person. And if for some reason that is not successful the week of October 24th to November 1st, I think I'm going to fill out my absentee ballot and hand deliver it either to a ballot box or to the Board of Elections, as you shared our options earlier. And have those be my plan A, early voting, and my plan B, hand deliver my absentee ballot to a ballot box or to the Board of Elections.
Great.
What do you
think? I really quickly want to mention just a quick note about voter IDs. And if you have to show an ID when you go to vote. In New York, if it is your first time voting, you might be asked to show an ID. Everyone else, you should not be asked for an ID, and that's really important to keep in mind. But if it is your first time voting, that's amazing. Bring your ID, because if you are asked, you don't want anything to get in the way of you voting.
And is any ID, do you need a state or a state issued ID or a passport? Do you know what kinds of identification count as ID, or just something
it can be a photo ID. It can be a photo ID, it can be a utility bill, a bank statement, a paycheck, pretty much anything that shows your name and address.
Anything that shows your name and address. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, back to the voting plans. I too am, my goal is to vote early in person. I am an able-bodied young person, and I take COVID precautions really seriously. As you can see, I'm in a cabin. So I feel that I should go out there and vote because I'm able to, but I am mindful that things really can change. There's a chance I might need to quarantine. There's a chance a million things can happen. So I also have requested an absentee ballot. I've been tracking it. It has not shipped yet, so I'm really keeping an eye on that. And yeah, that's my backup plan, an absentee ballot, and either I will mail it back if there's enough time, or I will have a roommate or a friend drop it off at a poll site on my behalf, which is an option.
Awesome. I've also been thinking a lot about, like, what does it mean to make a plan for ourselves? And also, the truth is, so many of us, our voting plans are also our family's voting plans and vice versa. Many of us need to figure out childcare or general caretaking, have family members with a disability who need assistance getting to and from the polls or filling out their ballot. So I've also been thinking a lot. I am in all of those former categories, not childcare specifically, but I have a mom who needs assistance voting, and I have an older sister with a disability who also needs assistance voting. And so I'm considering them also as part of my own voting plan. I have a plan for myself, and then I have a plan to help them. And we actually haven't made these decisions yet, but we've all requested and received our absentee ballots, and then we're figuring out how to weigh the risks of in-person voting. I'm considering trying to vote early in the week between October 24th and November 1st, and sort of feeling it out, seeing how it is. I'm registered to vote in the same place that my mom and my dad and my sister are registered to vote. So I want to sort of get a sense of the space and the wait times and what that whole experience is looking like, and see if it feels like possible and appropriate risk for them to do the same, or if we want to, in fact, go the absentee ballot route for the three of them, or some combination of the three of them, and then again, hand deliver or mail potentially.
Yeah. That seems like a really tough call to make, but it seems like you're kind of going about it in the best possible way.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the lessons of this moment is that there's no winning plan. These are so subjective. Each of our lives and our ability to take certain kinds of COVID exposure risk or inability to do so, they weigh heavily on the path that we choose for voting, always, but particularly with so many competing factors, risk factors, that is, for this moment in particular. So it's complex, and there's no wrong choice. As long as folks are voting, people are making plans in advance. And when I say plans, I mean a plan A and a plan B, and if you can, a plan C. There's no wrong choice.
Definitely.
There's no wrong choice.
I've also been thinking, just because, I don't know, Meg, you and I have spent a lot of time thinking about this. I know JCC Harlem is itself a poll site.
That's right.
And we spent a lot of time researching this information, but it's been so complicated. You and I have asked each other a million questions. And so I think
as recently as right before starting this conversation, we were like, wait. How do you drop off your ballot? Are they at all poll sites? Like each day, another question emerges that we thought we knew the answer to and seem not. This is a very intimidating set of decisions that we all have to make. The landscape's real.
And not everyone has the amount of time that we have had to review all of the information and to understand it. So for me, my parents, while they are not a part of my personal voting plan, they are registered in Arizona, and it's really complicated. And they have a lot of questions about how they can vote, and if in Arizona they can vote by absentee ballot and then decide to go vote in person if they're worried about it or anything. And so for me, as part of my voting plan, is also helping my parents with their voting plan to make sure that they understand all of their options. So I think that if you have the space and the time and the ability, help out those around you, because not everyone has the ability to fully process all of that information.
And it is statistically proven that people who are having conversations about what their voting plans are and who are holding others accountable and feeling held accountable by your family, your friends, your neighbors, your community, we are all more likely to vote when we are having these conversations and when we are making really thoughtful plans. Stuff's going to shift. That's just truth. But if we plan, it means that we are prepared for the shifts that are ahead of us, for sure. And it does not impede our ability to vote and be counted in this historic election.
Right. So speaking of plans, we have our voting checklist.
We do. It's an awesome voting checklist for you all.
Have it here. Gorgeous.
It is a beautiful document we've put together, and also a really simple one.
Yep. So do you think we should walk through it?
I think let's do a quick walkthrough. Let's do it. And if you are following us along at home or wherever you are, and you have access to this voter checklist, which we will also link, feel free to follow along with us too.
Yep. So the first part of the checklist is confirming within the last 30 days that you are registered to vote at your current address. If you have done that, you can circle yes, and you're good to move on to the next step. If you have not done that, your next task is to check that and to register if need be.
Pause this video if you're watching this and go check at vote.org/am I registered to vote. We will link that as well, but it is the number one most important thing for everyone to be sure about.
Mm-hmm. And then we have our voting plan A, where you will choose if you're voting by mail, if you're voting early in person, or if you're voting on election day in person. And you can circle which one you're doing. My plan A is to vote early in person.
Mine too.
Mm-hmm. And then as part of this voting plan A, you have to think about the things that you might need to get in order to make this possible, to make this something you can actually do. So you might need to check your assigned, you definitely need to check your assigned polling place. You need to maybe rearrange your work schedule or take time off. We'll also include some information because in New York, depending on the type of hours you work, you are legally entitled to, I believe it's 2 hours of time to go vote. But we will include the link on that so you can directly have that information. You plan your transportation, and do all of those things to make sure that you're good to go.
Childcare arrangements, so many things need to happen in order for us to make voting plans, especially when we are anticipating potential long lines for early voting, and certainly on election day. We have to allocate more than 15 minutes for sure, for in particular our in-person voting plans, if that's part of our master voting plan.
Mm-hmm. And then voting plan B is the same thing, but voting plan B is your alternative voting plan if plan A is no longer an option for you. If your childcare plans fall through, if you get COVID-19 and you have to quarantine, how are you going to vote then? So voting plan B is writing down your backup plan so that if plan A falls through, you are not left stressed with what you should do.
For sure. And for those of us who have the privilege of being able to spend time thinking about this, who may have flexible enough work schedules and childcare options or caretaker options for coverage, it's really, really important that we don't only depend on a plan A as voting on November 3rd in person, because it's very hard to have a backup plan if that is your primary plan. There are so many for whom that is the only plan that's possible for them. And so for those of us, and that is certainly not all of us watching, but probably many, we need to make alternative plans that allow for what we hope is incredible historic voter turnout on election day, which is going to really, there will be a lot of activity at our polling places, and we just want to make sure that if that's your only choice, you get to do that successfully. So for those of us who have other options, we should certainly consider them.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I mean, I feel pretty good. I have loved walking through this with you. I anticipate that some part of my plan, my family's plan, is going to shift over time, but I feel really secure that I have received my ballot and I have double checked that it's the correct name and address, same for my family members. And that there's a whole week of potential early voting. I'm hoping that I'm successful the first time I try to go, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm also going to try to go early in the early voting week so that if for some reason I run out of time while I'm waiting in line, I'll have 6 more options, let's say, ahead of me in order to make that happen.
Yep, so many options. And while we were speaking, I did look up, and if you are in line and 9 p.m. passes, stay in line. You should be allowed to vote. So don't let that deter you. Just wanted to close that point.
And also a reminder that if you show up either early to vote or on election day and your name is not on the roll and they say, we do not have record of your name here, request an affidavit or a provisional ballot. They're the same thing.
Mhm.
What those ballots allow you to do is to vote in the federal and any statewide races. You will not be able to vote if there are any local races happening in your district. You will not, unfortunately, be able to vote for those, but at the very least, you'll be able to cast your vote for the other elections, including the president.
Yep. Although I believe they were only counted under very special circumstances.
Counted when there's a small margin.
Okay, well, every vote counts, so.
Every vote counts. Do not let that deter you. It is super possible that this election could be close. And so make sure you cast your vote via affidavit or provisional ballot if you show up on election day and find that your name's not on the roll.
Yep. All right.
Awesome. I'm feeling
good.
Are you feeling good?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. Feeling eager to see this election season come together.
Me too. And thank you all for hopefully tuning in and filling out your checklist with us. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach us. We'll have our information linked somewhere so you can reach out if you have further questions that we are most happy to help you answer.
Thank you.